Welcome to The Wanderer's Compass, a Big Blend radio travel podcast featuring Joelle Machia and Ryan Slough. Welcome, everyone. Today, we are excited because it is the very first official episode of The Wanderer's Compass. It's a new Big Blend radio podcast featuring Joelle Machia and Ryan Slough. And first thing I've got to ask Joelle, did I get your last name right yet?
You did,
No?
believe it or not, the first and the last, because most people get both wrong.
Oh, well, there it is. Okay, so we're on a good start for this podcast. And Ryan, did I get yours right? I think I did.
You did, yes, for how my family pronounces it anyway.
Well, there it is. Everyone, I encourage you to go to find out how Joelle and Ryan spell their names. Go to wandererscompass.com. That's their blog that they founded and own, and they travel the world. They travel the country, going to all kinds of places, definitely loving castles. That's how we first met them here on Big Blend Radio through the organization, the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association that we do shows with here on Big Blend Radio. And then, I don't know, we started talking more and saying, well, this is fun. Let's do more. And then more became more. And here we are today with a monthly show. This is every second Monday. You want to tune in for Big Blend Radio's Wanderer's Compass podcast. So today we're going to find out, we're going to dig into the history of Joelle and Ryan. Yeah, we're going to get all the good gossip, but we're going to hear about some of their travels and where they've been, where they're going. But first, Joelle, I want to start off about how you connected with Ryan, right? Am I right? This was kind of a pen pal thing, which people may think that doesn't exist anymore, but it was kind of a pen pal thing, right?
Sort of, yeah. So way back, and we're talking over 18 years now, this is during the Afghanistan and Iraq wars that I've always felt an incredible pull to support the military. And I had heard about a program called Soldiers Angels, in which you volunteer to send mail, postcards, and packages to deployed soldiers overseas. And so I thought, oh, this sounds awesome. A simple thing I can do to help someone who's obviously far from home and serving our country. And so I contacted them, and sort of the rule of play was very simple. You send packages and you send all these things they recommend 2 more times a month, and you don't expect anything back. They never have to respond to you. We will let you know when they come home, but this is the thing. And you don't ask anything of them. You say you want to meet them. So I said, fine, did it. And Ryan was my first adoptee, and that's what they call that you adopt a soldier. Ryan was my first. And I started sending him packages and letters, and he immediately responded like most did. They would say, thank you so much. We really appreciate this. And I'd say, well, tell me what you need. Do you like books? Do you like DVDs or so forth? Candy, certain foods. And I started sending Ryan stuff very regularly. And we would talk via email, only via email, of course, and through his whole deployment. And then toward the end, he said, and it was by coincidence because other people I adopted were not local. He happened to be at a base about an hour from me. So he said, it'd be great if I can meet you and your family. And I said, of course, we would love to meet you. And that's sort of where it began. He became part of the family. My husband and I definitely took him under our wings, as well as, we've traveled with him. He's gone on family vacations. He's been to family weddings. So it just became a part of our family. He then left active duty and moved back east to Baltimore, back to his home. And I had a lot of business trips back there because I was formerly a medical professional and did a lot of audits for the National Cancer Institute. So I went back there regularly and saw him. And it's just that relationship, that family connection just grew and grew. And sort of that's how we began. He was one of 8 soldiers I adopted over the next 7 years. And several of them have become very much part of our family as well. And so it's been quite an amazing experience. And people say, oh, it's so cool what you did. And I said, no, they have brought so much to our lives. And Ryan definitely in the case as well. And so it's been an incredible experience for me. And I continue to do all I can to volunteer and help with the military. I served in the USO for many, many years. I've taken the last year off, but I've been working there since 2011. So anything I can do, because I just consider them our heroes, people who support country. So that's how we met, and we started
What was the
traveling.
organization that you did that through again?
Soldiers Angels.
Yeah, we've done a number of shows on
Have
Soldiers
you?
Angels. Yes, all with innkeepers because they do. In fact, we were just talking about this with our friend Steve and Karen Wilson. They own the Lion and the Rose Bed and Breakfast in Asheville, North Carolina, and they got us started on this. During COVID, we did a lot of coverage on bed and breakfast because they really needed to get the word out that they were open and they could handle like COVID, health laws and all that stuff, right? And because these are small businesses, and we became friends with them. And they do Soldiers Angel. They bake for soldiers, and
Yes,
they
that's
bake
one of the
cookies
things.
and
Yeah.
brownies, and so we have done probably between that and then another show that a program that they have, Innkeepers for Veterans, where they donate a night stay for veterans on Veterans Day or around that time frame. So a lot of innkeepers do these programs, and we were just talking about what we're going to do for that. And so we'll be back in touch with you guys.
Yeah.
But Ryan, have you received the cookies when you're out on duty?
I received many things. Yeah, we it's funny because my first deployment, I'd actually didn't write anybody back. It was, and both were in Afghanistan, and it was just, I was an engineer when I started out, so I mean, we were just living in tents and just constantly dirty, usually not no running water, and burnout latrines, and all kinds of not fun stuff. So there's a lot of sleepless nights and days and whatever. So we'd get all kinds of random things, socks or cookies and whatever the case
No.
would come by. And that's kind of one of the reasons why during my second deployment to Afghanistan is when I decided to write them Joelle back, because that was one of the first packages I got, and it was just this ridiculously overboard package, which is funny. I never actually got her. She sent me a letter first, and I didn't get that till probably 2 months after I got
Oh, wow.
the first package, and I opened it up, and it's like my name is Joelle, and blah blah. I'm like, why is she sending this? Because being in the middle of nowhere, your mail kind of sometimes gets lost. So I had this amazing package of just like I think there was like a CD for like something that was a recent popular band or something, or CD that was out, and same with there was a
Cool.
DVD or two, and just all kinds of anything you'd ever want for snacks and whatever. And I was like, well, I really have to write this person back. Like I feel, and now she
I
can't
love
get rid of
this.
me. So it's like,
I love
don't feed the
this.
bears. No, look.
Yeah, really, really. Hey, we're in Asheville right now, and there's, as you know, Asheville went through Hurricane Helene, so there's a lot of construction and sawing down of broken trees and all kinds of stuff going on. But everyone has, like, outside in the neighborhoods, these giant, what do you call it? The trash things, giant dumpsters
hmm
for all the construction stuff. And I'm noticing these signs, like every day another sign goes up on one going, please do not put food in here. Bears are back. And I'm like, as I'm walking and I hear like something, I'm like, dude, no. But anyway, I have seen the bears in the neighborhoods multiple times in Asheville, and they do roam the neighborhoods. It's pretty cool. But they do come back for food. Like, obviously Ryan did with Joelle, but I love this story so much in that you're in two different parts of the world, right?
Yes.
So that incorporates travel, but okay, food, of course, food is part of travel, and food brings people together. Even if it's something you don't want to eat, you go like, dude, how do you eat that? And try or whatever. But it's also writing. So I love that part. There's just such unity in all of this, and it kind of goes into where you are, with Wanderer's Compass. Ryan, did you ever think you'd be traveling the world, running a blog and telling people about all these amazing sites? I know you love castles and history, and you do a lot of that part in travel, but did you ever think that would happen while you were on duty in the military? And
No, I mean, I figured my time in the military was going to be the extent of my travel. Um, and like I said, I always enjoyed travel when I was, or, learning about travel when I was little. I grew up on like Rick Steves, watching
Mm.
that, and, you see, uh, you know, movies with castles and, books and whatever. And I just, never expected that I would be able to, do those things because we grew up kind of poor. There was a lot of things in my life that were a little rough. I lost my dad when I was 8 years old from lung
Oh.
cancer. So
Mm.
our bad finances went worse, and my mom struggled for a long time to get us out of that. She stuck with a job, I think 47 years, the same job, Social Security Administration, doing a
Oh
job she
boy.
didn't, like to get us to where we are and give us the opportunity to be something. But then when I moved into the military, it kind of opened my eyes to new things. I mean, I like had never been out of the state really, besides Virginia and whatever. And once I got there, I mean, I'm going all these different states, and then then I get stationed out to Washington, and then now I'm in Afghanistan, which opened up my eyes a lot to just a whole part of the world that I never even knew existed really. Because that was never a part of the world I thought of or expected to go. I'm always thinking about England and Ireland and castles or whatever, and not remembering that there's so much other, so many other places out there. And after a few tours to Afghanistan, and then having the opportunity to be more of an adult finally and build some finances, um,
Mm.
I kind of took whatever opportunities I could. And, once I got out of active duty, I went to the reserves. Then I went to Uganda for a small mission for like 3 weeks,
Oh
and,
wow.
just seized these opportunities where, any volunteering or, whatever, I would take it. And then
Mm.
eventually, once she, insisted that I, go on a trip. I mean, I almost backed out many times on that
Oh
first
yeah.
trip because I was just so stressed. I'm like, I don't know, like, because it's expensive and it's, I don't know what I'm doing. And it's, and I just had so much going on in my life, I guess. But once I did that, I had to figure my life out so I could
Mm.
keep doing that and experience things. So
Mm.
once we got back from that trip, I'm like, well, I gotta keep doing that. It was like, I guess it was what, the next year, right? That
Yep.
we went on our next trip, and I was like, okay, so
Mm.
and I got a better job, and I started saving up, and then not too long after that, I got my first house, and I went from couldn't even get a credit card, and a very low credit score, and I was delivering pizzas at the time, so to now, then I
Wow.
got a good security job for a DoD contract, and then I got a house, and I just kept going from there, and eventually getting promoted
Wonderful.
in the military. And now I've keep using that as motivation to
Yeah.
travel to motivate me to do better in life, and so
I mean, it's
I,
been
lo- I,
truly transformational. I mean, that's the way to describe it.
yeah.
It literally changed his life. And that's one reason, because I talked about travel all the time because I've been traveling since I was young. And he would just light up when I was talking, but it was like, oh, that will never happen. He just didn't have the confidence and the faith in himself because life had been so hard to be able to make that happen. That's like, well, once he sort of seemed to get settled in life and be able to have some, got a better job, I said, why don't you come along on one of the trips? He had come on family trips, but this was like, hey, I'm going to Europe. Why don't you come along? Which I often did with people. And it was like we got to our first stop was Dublin. And then we spent a brief, day in Dublin and head on the road. And then our first stop that day was Trim Castle. And I just remember him lighting up, absolutely lighting up as if a kid in a candy store. And he sort of never let that go since. It was like, this is the most amazing thing. And Trim Castle has, not only a lot of history to it, but also has, Hollywood's been there. There's been a lot of movies filmed there. But just to watch him, and it also sort of changed how I saw the world because all of a sudden
Mm.
it wasn't just my, so many years of life experience traveling. It was seeing it through his eyes. And so it was actually transformational for me too. But for Ryan, it really did change the direction of his life and his motivation, his belief in himself, and saying, I can see so much like this is possible, especially with some of the things we deal with, on the blog is, hey, this is how you can do it. You don't have to be rich to do this. There's a way to get points. You can travel for free and so forth. But his main motivation early on from that first trip, and, that kept feeding him, is I can help other people do this. I want other people like myself, veterans who are disabled, to see the world and let them know it's possible and how transformational it is. So that is the message, you would say, that from his took someone who didn't believe it, didn't have any hope for the future, and literally changed his life. And that was really just based on really a couple trips. Now, what was starting the blog was years later, but that was what started the whole process.
Well, I love this because, again, you guys are connected on different things. And Joelle, understanding, Ryan's family background with his dad, and the cancer side of things, that part of it really well from the medical world that you come from, your background, and you both understand that. I mean, working in, oncology and what happens, Nancy and I did this in South Africa for a couple of years with our artwork, touring and raising funds for the National Cancer Association through her artwork. And it was really, we raised funds, but it was creating awareness. At that time, it was in the 80s, late 80s. It was 1 in 4 people were diagnosed with cancer. Now we do not, everyone is touched by cancer in their family or friends, everyone. And so on the same side, when you look at what happens going into the military and serving and being on duty and, the places you've been to, Ryan, that's scary. You've seen the life and death of things, right? Both of you. And I think that is a catalyst, not to be like, how do I put this? When we lived in Kenya, which you were in Uganda, so not far. We went to Uganda real quick too. When we lived over there, we used to cross borders all the time. Just like, oh, there's a border. Let's hop it and say we went there. But Kenya and South Africa got a little rough at the end, and you became a very survivor mentality. You know what I mean? Like like when we got to this country, I was paranoid. I mean, we went through the riots and everything that went on, and everything is, and you experience this when you go to Europe. You don't go in anywhere without being checked for a bomb. And when I was raised, limpet mines, AK-47s, all of that. You have to be able to identify it. It's in the post offices. It's in schools. Hand grenades are a big deal. They use that a lot, which is fun. But when we got here, I remember my aunt was like the first day we were in the States, and I was 19, and she's like, oh, you got to go to a mall. I've got to take you to a mall. And honestly, couldn't be less interested, but anyway, was not my thing. And then she was like, you have to have a root beer. I've never had a root beer, but no, you have to have this giant root beer. And I'm like, I don't like it, but I'll sip it and try it. But, and it's like, that was America for her. But we go into a mall, and I am paranoid because there's no security. Like, to me, there's like, you're walking into a death trap. That's how our mindset was. But at the same time, there's this resiliency that comes from this, where you'll try things that maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. Ryan, does that make sense? Like, you just kind of go, all right, I've seen some of the worst stuff and been through it. And so it kind of, in a way, boosts your confidence a little further once you get started, right? You're like, I can handle that. You know what I mean? Because other things have been a lot harder.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, I mean, it gives me an appreciation of a lot of things. Obviously, being in Afghanistan and seeing their lives compared to mine, even at my worst here, was still probably better than their best, at some points,
Yeah.
And then being over there and kind of living in a way the same way a lot of them do. Like, we're living in dirt and tents and, no AC and no running water and, just learning what you're capable of. But then, when I'm over there, I was able to have little experiences that, some locals would, you know, sort of bribe and be like, "Hey, bring us back,
Mhm.
whatever from the village." And,
Yep.
they'd come back with like whatever bread they made and, some whatever meat product or whatever they had and like go so like, and we'd trade them some stuff, and, get the
That's
experience,
cool.
local stuff and, something that I would never try or probably otherwise at home. But it's just opening your eyes and just giving you appreciation for things and giving you the opportunity to
Mm.
do things and open your eyes to a lot of new stuff and opportunities to try things. And once
Yeah.
I, like I said, once I got back and once I started traveling with Joelle, she insists on that. And sometimes I am reluctant, but still do it. And
We
we've
must
tried,
all get out of our comfort zone.
yeah,
It's
and
the
we've
only way to
and
truly live.
a perfect example. I mean, we've tried many, you know, odd
Very odd.
cuisines, and some not very good. But it was just weird. It's what it is, I mean, she loves escargot. I tried it. She forced me to try it. I was not a fan, and she insists I
Thank
should
God
try
for
it
the
again.
garlic in it. Thank
Yeah,
God for the garlic.
still don't
Serious.
like it. And but
No.
but our first trip, we it was like I know what haggis is and black pudding, blood pudding,
Hmm.
and all that stuff, and I'm like, I'm never gonna eat that. No way, no way. And then she's like, you gotta try it. It's like, first trip, and I tried it, and I love it. Every time I go any in that region, I'm like, more haggis and black pudding or what, you know. So one of the things I do enjoy when so it's, I never would have done that otherwise. I would have just been like, okay, that's a thing they have and never tried it. But, taking
Yeah.
those opportunities and getting out of, you said, out of your comfort zone and trying things and experiencing it. That's the whole thing, whole part of travel, like you take the opportunity to, it's,
Yeah.
it's the
We've
new
learned a lot.
experiences.
We've learned that people speak through their food. It's culturally
Hmm.
important. So one thing we tend to do, which has served us so well over the years, is we'll, of course, really love to interact with the staff at any restaurant or place we're eating. And then we'll say, what do you recommend? What does the chef suggest? What, what do the locals order? We were at this restaurant in Lisbon and everyone around us had completely full octopuses. I mean, like big. They were 8 inches, around, big honk, and everyone was getting them. And I was just like, well, of course, the octopus. This is his thing. And so Ryan's like, there's no way. But I got one, and it was sort of weird. It was good, but it was way too much octopus. It's literally a giant one. But it was so cool at some point because the chef came out. He was so excited that that's what we ordered and that we had it, and he was touched by it. And we've learned over time that we say, well, what does the chef suggest? What do you guys eat? Because we want to experience, because when you experience their food, when you share food with them, you bring their community into your lives. You actually are experiencing this cultural immersion because so many people speak through their food. And so we've eaten some weird stuff. In Mexico, we ate bugs. We've eaten sea urchins. We've eaten all sorts. But we were actually in Easter Island, and we were on a guided thing through one of the parks, and we came across this other guide who was he had picked up a sea urchin from the ocean, and he cut it open. People were just scooping it out with their finger. And it was like, initially thought, oh my gosh, that looks just yucky and risky. But at the same time, here was this moment. You could tell he was so proud that he was sharing this with us. And so we both had some, even Ryan did. And
Freshest seafood I ever had. Literally about 4 seconds out of the water. So.
Yeah. It is those things where you can have those local experiences. You're tasting exactly what the people eat. And a lot of the dishes come from peasant food, so that
yes.
tells the history and the story of the people. It's like in Africa, you eat street food and people freak out, but it's like freshly made. It's like right there, same in Mexico, everybody, there's some times when, things don't go well. And that could happen in the States, quite frankly, quite often. So,
Oh, yes.
I'm really not that worried about it, but I think that's a huge thing for travel writers, is to do that, is to connect with food. And I think a lot of people do, but I want to just tell people that you've got a wonderful Q&A that we've published up on blendradioandtv.com. It's 10 questions we pitched your way to get to know you more and also to talk about the craft of travel writing. So when you're traveling, Joelle, how do you guys take notes? Are you doing it separately? Do you get together at the end of the day? I mean, even keeping, records like photos. Thank God for photos and digital
Oh my
photography.
goodness.
Otherwise, I'd be up a creek somewhere. But yeah, Joelle, what do you do? And then Ryan, I want to go to you on the same thing to keep organized of what you've experienced because I know we move fast as travel writers, in an area. You try to get a little bit of everything. Sometimes you get stuck somewhere and go, I'm not going to do the rest because I'm going to do a big story here. It's different for everyone, but yeah, how do you keep track of what you've experienced and what you're going to write?
I mean, one thing we've learned early on is we can't let our need to write everything down dominate what we are. We need to experience where we are. So we've really worked hard to focus on the experience because what we've learned is when you just focus on the story you're going to tell, you're losing some of the experience. So firsthand is to live the moment. And one thing we find that helps us document, and we are photographers, that's something we're very proud of and something we've had a lot of recognition on is our photography, is the photography tells a story. So how we sort of take notes is, okay, we go up to a castle, we take a picture of the history of the castle, we take a picture of the name of the castle, and then we take a bunch of photos of the castle. So that becomes a bit of our documentation because now I could go back because I've taken images of the story or, hey, this is what this room is, or this is the history, this is who was the main players in this castle. So we have found that it really becomes our easiest form of documenting. And then we keep this throughout the day because obviously you have your time print, you have the GPS location to the photos you took. So that helps document what you're doing. And then special things, we always keep a master list during the day. And as we go from point A to point B throughout the day, one of us obviously is driving, the other one is not. So we'll make notes of things that were important. And we're not taking extensive. It's just really highlights because we have the photos to back up plus the research that predominantly Ryan does, but we'll both do prior to going to a place so we have a better understanding of what we're looking at, what we're seeing, what the story is behind it. Because a building is only a building, but the story is what makes it special. And so we combine what our pre-research notes we take. We just literally, it's just several pages of just every stop we have. We have an itinerary, a broad one. It's not literally very specific. And we take little notes of things to remember or maybe websites to go to. And then we have the photographs to back it up. And then it's a matter of documenting. Now we do, when we travel, we don't do much writing because obviously we're traveling and it's harder to do that. I mean, our days go for 12, 14 hours, but we always do social media posts every day we travel. And so there we're also, that's a way we're documenting. We're telling the story of the area, our photographs. So there to write those posts, which we tend to be long-winded, or at least Ryan will say I'm the long-winded one.
Yes.
Well, see, this is where a team thing is really good because it curbs the yes.
Yeah, we balance each other out that way. I say no.
I joke now because I'm going for my degree in strategic communications right now. So I'm like, see what you got to do. You got to do this kind of communication. They're like, you got to be concise by doing the whatever, the active voice and this and that.
He definitely has become the major editor on everything. But that's another way we keep track of it because then we have our social media stories and the images also to back up. So there's a multiple elements to it, but we also, and at night we'll review things, but we won't spend an hour or two just writing everything down because we want to go enjoy that meal at a local restaurant. We want to be, go to that pub and have a beer with the locals, whatever the case may be. And if we're sitting or doing in a room hours writing things down, we're losing the experience we gain stories from. So it's finding that balancing act. And over time, we've really, I think, mastered that. And then if we need to go back, we always collect names. Like when I was just on a recent trip, I got, names, emails, addresses of anyone who might contribute to a story we write. So I said, if can I reach out to you after if I need to fine tune some details or want to make sure we're accurate? We always offer that to people because we want to be accurate. If you're not accurate, you lose credibility. So it's also keeping those connections you make so you can go back and verify that you are telling the right story, that you are got the facts right. Because when you spend 20 days on a trip and you're being constantly told facts, they're going to mesh. They're going to be like, did they say it was this many or that many? So we approach it very different ways, but making sure that we don't lose why we love this to begin with, to travel, to experience, to immerse ourselves, and to be authentic. And that's not going to be the case if we're spending 6 hours a day in our hotel room making notes.
Heck no, nobody wants to be in a hotel room that long.
No.
I don't, I mean, it's just sleep and shower and go,
Yep.
Ryan, how much, the pre-research sounds like that guy, like, obviously you have to have that spontaneity. I think we touched on that when you first came on the show about castle hunting. Y'all have been to over 430 castles.
Yes, we
but
have.
having that research beforehand, doesn't that take a lot of weight off your shoulders about getting there and going, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do now? So you kind of know what are potential stories. Of course, you don't know until you're really there, but you have those potential ideas that can, morph into something once you get home.
Yeah, I mean, doing research always before we go somewhere helps, keep you from missing those things that you might not know about. There's certain things, where you see a picture of a castle, oh, this is whatever, but if you research, then you're like, oh, there's this certain room or certain famous painter, something that might stand out that's very unique with that, or a certain balcony you get to go on that's a really great view or something that, research is always great, way to maximize your visits of anything you do. So we try to do a little research and just kind of know when things are open. 'Cause sometimes certain parts might not be open to the public, or certain days or whatever. But
Yeah.
we try to find a balance because they said we don't want to sit around with us and anyone else. We don't really have that luxury of, oh, let me go, 2 weeks on a vacation, and then I'm spending 5 days of that sitting around just writing, sitting every morning and let's write for 5 hours or something and go out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't want to do that. So we just take periodic notes. We use our lists where, said, well, we might have our itinerary because we don't keep our stuff set in stone. We like, hey, here's all these things, but sometimes when we're driving, we're like, oh, this is way better. Let's go over here, and we'll skip whatever place, or we end up loving some place, so we stay a lot longer. So we'll be like, well, these other ones aren't much to see and they're kind of out of the way. We'll skip that one and just go on. So, and then we just mark off what we did do, so we know, we don't look at our itinerary later and be like, I don't remember all of these, or which castle was what, and we got to look at it.
Yeah.
We just, we put a check mark of, okay, this is ones we did in the order, and then we write down anything new and kind of keep a little log like that, which is, I think, the best. But I think one of these days maybe we'll try and do how a lot of other people do, where they set up cameras or this and that, and they will sit a dedicated time, and maybe I should start doing voice recordings or something on speak and text and do some notes.
Oh, there's
quickly.
a lot to do. Yeah, there's so many different ways to create content. The most important is to actually be there and have it be your own content.
Yeah.
That's the crucial thing. And that's the other thing is once you get home from doing a whole bunch of travel, you find out what connects and what doesn't. And you don't really know that until you come back and kind of mull it over. There's like
Very true.
There's that time where you're just like, oh, I never thought of this story, and it, merges, connects with all these other places we went or whatever it was.
Yeah.
It's just, you need to kind of have time to digest it all because it's such a whirlwind and it's exciting, but you need that digestion time. And then it's like, oh, I got to go and do this post. You guys, do like a Military Monday post, don't you? Is it?
Warrior Wednesday. Yeah.
That's it. As soon as I said Military Monday, because we do Military Monday.
We should have done that. No.
Yeah, I know. No, don't you come on our show. Take that away from us. No, I'm kidding. But Warrior Wednesday, as soon as I said that, I was like, I got that wrong. But so you do that, like, so do you like have this conversation back and forth of what's happening, or do you like assign roles and then you go off and do whatever? Like, how does that work for like your social media? Ryan, do you work on most of that part for the Warrior Wednesday?
Yeah, I mean, I try to do the most on that, and since that's sort of my realm where I'm dedicated to doing, a specific task, so it's, time she knows she doesn't have to do it and do other things. But
Yeah.
I don't really have an assigned agenda to it. I just randomly, I literally would just go on a map, Google Maps, and I like what country, and I just like look at the map. I'm like, what country we have not done recently? Or whether I got to look back at my logs and be like, okay, and I just Google Castle again or whatever, or I look at my list, or I'll just go on our site to our master castle list, and like, yeah, you know what, all that, but then I, got to remember that, oh, there's other things like, like the arenas, like gladiator arenas and stuff. We just did one in Pula in Croatia. And there's different fortification, like old forts or like Hadrian's Wall. There's a lot of other things, that we can do. So we did
Cool.
I think we did a kind of a fun one like a while back when we were in New York. We went to this super old pub that's like where they help the founding fathers like would go and gather and
Oh, the
plan
tavern. Isn't
yeah
it? Oh,
Yes.
what's it called? The
and
tavern.
yeah and
Yeah.
plan the revolution and stuff. So it's kind of like, well, they were in their own right warriors, so it was just kind of like, hey, here's this pub, but like we tied it to the thing. So we try to just come up with
Yeah. See,
whatever, it's not, there's no,
It was Francis Tavern, and it
yeah,
was
there it
actually
is.
heavily focused in Hamilton.
yeah.
Ah, that's
So,
right. That's
yeah,
right.
so we have a sort of set schedules for everything. For me, like we have that, and we have a certain format we follow, but it's not, like I say, completely
Mm.
rigid. We try to find different things and unique stuff.
Last week
I love.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Last week I was in the Presidio in San Francisco, and so we made that a Warrior Wednesday because there's very much a Wednesday element to it because this has been around since 1776, and a lot of military history is on that base. So we made that a
Huge.
Warrior Wednesday post. So we're just flexible. It could be forts, it could be again stories of gladiators, but it's also castles or just actually a town that really had a very prominent military history. So it's just been we've done it now for a year and 3 months, and it's actually one of our most popular days on social media.
I bet because it's, there's people that are military history junkies, and then there's, those who serve or have served, and, and family of, and people who just really want to learn more. So I think it's huge, and it's great to shine a light on that because, there's an understanding that comes with these places. That's what got me into history when, we traveled all over, but it was South Africa when we were on the tour with Nancy's art. And we went to Umhlanga Rocks and, Shaka Zulu. And it was all about what he did as a warrior. And I think I was 13 or something. And then I understood what he did as a chief warrior. And what happened in the Anglo Zulu Wars. And I mean, he was masterful. How he took out the British. Oh my gosh. And then I really got it. And next thing you know, history, I was lagging, and yet I loved history. I read like every War and Peace when I was a kid, that kind of historical fiction stuff. But then I wasn't doing well. And it was just the way it wasn't coming through in class for me. But as soon as we traveled, history became alive, and I graduated at the top. That was my graduating thing, was history
Oh,
of all
really?
things. Yeah, that was like the higher, whatever they called it in South Africa, higher. That was like my top thing. I graduated like with history as my top thing. And it wouldn't have been that way if it wasn't for travel. But I could sit and tell you how, Shaka Zulu took out the British to this day. I mean, he surrounded them. He made his warriors run in the bush barefoot. So they would run over hot coals. He made them do that before Tony Robbins did. And you had to run over thorns so that whatever circumstance you were in, your bodies were ready to handle whatever the British did. And so they would do that. And then they circled. They knew how to use their shields were their big thing. the British didn't really understand their weaponry as much, like assegais and knobkerries, which you could kill somebody just if you whack that knobkerrie right under the chin or the back of their head. There's like a certain area. But anyway, this is real polite. But anyway, but they would surround them like they looked at it as like a crawl, because everybody would go and put themselves in, and the Dutch did this too. Little crawl, which is like it's like a circle, like they'd put their little wagons in a circle. They called it a crawl. And they're like, oh, well, we're just going to swallow you up. And that's what they did. They just circled the circle and took them out. They were sitting ducks.
Wow.
Anyway, sorry, not to attack the British, but like Shaka nailed
It's history.
you.
It's history.
He nailed you, and then went after the Dutch, because then anyway. So it just got me into that, how they plotted this out. And they knew the land versus the typical maps that, here's the British going, oh, we're going to go over this creek over here. Yeah, good luck. There's snakes in there. So it was kind of cool to, to travel and understand that you understand what people sacrifice. And so the Warrior Wednesdays to me is excellent that you do that. I do want to go into one of the questions we asked you was if you could invite 3 people alive or passed on for a dinner party, who would they be? And you had to come up with 3 between 2 people. Now that's difficult. So who chose Anthony Bourdain?
I think we both did. We're a big fan of his work, not only from the food element, but just the travel, going out there, experiencing it, getting into especially places, not the standard places, going to, as we're big believers in going into off-beaten path, tiny towns, interacting with the locals. Again, definitely, we talked about earlier here, was just this experiencing the food from what their eyes are, not what we want. And just respecting the culture. Anthony Bourdain listened to people, cared about people when he was out there talking to them. And one of our biggest mottos is, we're a guest in their home, be a good one and be a respectful one. And Anthony Bourdain took that. He never went there and mocked people. He interacted with them. He genuinely seemed to want to hear their story and learn who they were. And we're very strong believers in that. So I think he would be fascinating to just, learn from in relation to how do you, in a way he engaged people. It was fascinating. And it would be really fun to learn some of his tips on how he did that, and just sort of pick up on the passion he had for seeing the world, for sharing the story, and being, of course, an amazing storyteller. So I think that was definitely someone that I think both of us would have agreed to, being at a gathering, because he speaks to a lot of what we believe in as we travel the world.
He's a very strong in his belief system too, and also an incredible writer, a novelist, and then just as a documentarian, just an incredible writer. So, Ryan, Rick Steves was one for you. You mentioned him earlier on the podcast today too. So he was on the list, mostly from your side, right? But who doesn't like Rick Steves?
Yeah. They said I grew up on him. It's I had PBS. That was my thing, because we didn't have cable. We didn't have and just learning. But it was just how he told, and how he just told the stories, and just went to all these great places, and it just seemed like so bright and just fantastic, everything that he went. I'm like, man, that's where everything kind of started as a kid, of having these ideas of all that, seeing these things, and then here I am eventually being able to do basically what he does, is still doing, so
cool,
I would love to be able to talk to him and see what's changed, and like how he sees it, because it seems like he still has the same passion that he did, all those years ago.
And he's political.
Yeah, and
yes, he is.
It's funny. He's kind of getting out there a little bit. I think maybe he's at a point where he's like, well, because he, especially with us too. It's everything that happens in this country and other countries, and affects what everyone. He does and what we do, and well, everyone, and it affects what we can and can't do travel wise. And we're going to Turkey coming up here soon, cool. And there's a lot of issues going on with political stuff, and so we just got to be aware of what's going on and understand things, and know that stuff affects. There's a lot of things that can affect what you can do, where you can go, when, and so on.
And also I think it's really important. I think travel writers and world travelers kind of get to this point of like, all right, it's the politicians doing stuff, and just, get with the people, because it's not always what the people
Yeah,
said,
and being
you
able to
know.
travel, and because many times we've had great conversations with people in the past. We get to a country and we learn so much from the people, and it's not exactly what you think it would be compared to what you probably see on TV or hear on the news. And we've had,
Exactly.
we were in Portugal, and we had years ago, and I think it was right before Trump was running the first time, and he had like all these great, and he was like all for. He's like he was talking about how he wanted to come to here, and just because he was really interested in politics, and he was he was like our wine sommelier at the time at the one winery, and he was just like, yeah, he's really interested about seeing what happened because it's a new dynamic, and just he was really interested in our political system and how it would change with him coming in, or what's because it's totally different and all these things. So, and it was a unique perspective because you think a lot of people, other countries might be totally against it at the time, or maybe it was just pro for, but he wasn't one or the other really. He was just interested in that, where most people seem like they don't want to talk about things because you don't want to offend anybody, or like or get someone riled up about. But we've had a lot of conversations about just things like that at local people, and they just are very respectful, and they kind of just talk about their opinions and like hey, well, this is what we're dealing with, or this, and without trying to tell us one thing or the other, or us telling them one thing or the other, just saying like, well, this is their view and this is what's happening right now where they are, and we kind of get a new
Hmm.
perspective of like, well, yeah, it's not always black and white, wherever you go. There's so much involved, and
Oh
that's
my
why
gosh.
it's like the ultimate research. Everyone's like, do your own research, don't believe what you see on TV, but that is, yes, we're out there going to these places, and you end up you know, finding
Yeah.
going to these little local towns, and it's, they might have a completely different opinion or view
Hmm.
or what's going on with them than the city we're just in. So,
It's very much like
Exactly.
it's going in there with open eyes and a kind heart, listening, literally just sitting back and listening. We're there not to talk about anything but the people, the culture, the food, their stories, the beauty. I mean, we're not there to go into anything other than that. And so
Hmm.
it's being respectful and realize you're a guest there too. Again, back to that being a guest. And it's just listening, and do not lead a conversation. Let them do the talking. We learn so much when we just sort of give an open-ended question, and they just share when they realize we're not sitting in judgment. And most of the times they aren't either. It's just a conversation. And we're really excited about Turkey because the people, everyone we've met from Turkey, actually, I just met a man when I was actually in San Francisco who's from Istanbul, and he had so much incredible stories to tell, and he was so excited for us going, and he's recommending all these places to go. And that, again, opening those doors, that it's just the people. It's about the people. And if we
It
just
is.
focus on the story, the culture, everyone is
Hmm.
welcome. I mean, any country I've been in, the ones they say, oh, be careful, it's going to be bad there. It turned out to be the
yeah,
opposite, because when you interact with the people, we're just people. We're all, human beings who love our families, who go to work every day, who have meals and eat and celebrate holidays and events. And when you start looking beyond, oh, they're this religion, what matters is the people. And when you engage that, that's the story we want to tell. That's what's real.
Hmm.
And that's what makes our adventure so amazing. The people we met along the way, the stories we heard, the connections we make, that feeds us. Even when sometimes you get tired and you go talk to somebody and you learn something, or you learn their story, you're just like invigorated again. And even if you weren't, some of the stuff we'll never write about, but we ourselves are completely transformed by those stories. Because you also then, which Ryan can speak to, is when you go to places like Europe, you realize, wow, they do so many things so well. It's so amazing, and it gives you a whole different perspective of our world here. And it helps us come back to appreciate ours, but also appreciate things we took for granted. And also realize, hey, we could do things a lot simpler. We don't need so many of these things. We can, we can focus more on eating at the table as a family, not rushing in, rushing out. All those things, if you go in with an open mind too, you can absorb all those things and come back and change your life. That's why one thing we've had, like our favorite recipes, places, things we eat throughout the world. We actually have a section on the blog, which is recipes from our travels.
Cool.
And then we practice them into different ways that make them as authentic to what we had there, and then share those recipes, because that's part of the story, that things that impressed us. And we do the same thing with certain liqueurs or wines from different parts of the world. We have a section of the blog about the different spirits over the places because they tell the story too.
Gee, how sad.
So those, telling those stories and going in and again, focusing not on the country itself, but the people, and telling their story. And then of course the beauty and the history is so an intricate part of who they are. So that's what we focus on when we're there.
I love that.
And listening.
I love that, because it's, like when we came back to the States after living in South Africa, and it was going through a whole change, and some people looked at me like, because I sounded so South African at the time. And they didn't know what country I was from. And I'm like looking at the money going, I don't know, your money doesn't make sense. It's all the same color. It's all like one thing looks the same. Like I'm used to, if it's $100, it's a big bill, not a teeny little same thing as a dollar bill, So, I was doing real well when I got here, but, people would look at me like, oh, like we're automatically racist as white people that have South African accents when they found out that we lived there. And it was furthest from the truth. And if you go to South Africa and you get to know the people, which we did, all the different cultures, had friends who were Muslim, friends who were Cape Coloreds, friends who were white, Afrikaans, non-Afrikaans, Zulu, Xhosa, you name it. We had friends in there, and they each had a different perspective of what was going on in the world in that country. And if you sit and listen to their story, you agree with them, and you go to the next person, you agree with them.
Yes,
and none of it works together in one pot, but they all have awesome food. And when you get to different cultures, man, that food has a story. And I love that you're doing the recipes, because that's a way people, if you can't go there, it's a way we can kind of, we can kitchen travel and try something new and learn about why did, like if you're in Hungary, paprika, however you want to say it, that's a huge part of the dishes, and it's like, why? And
the goulash. We have a recipe for that, because we did a food tour with a woman who actually we ended up becoming friends with, and we asked for her recipe for Hungarian goulash, which of course is heavy paprika, and it was amazing experience, and we love that recipe, made it ourselves. But it's just that, but that's never how I thought goulash was. It's just not my life experience was. So that's why we felt it was important to share that version of it. That
I'm going to have to try and make it, because we found out we're Hungarian. So we're going to
oh, really? Well, this is, this was their recipe. We 100% was her recipe. And it was just this, so this is authentic from a Hungarian who grew up there. And that's where her family, her mom cooked and so forth. And so, going to those real connections, to those real recipes from those experiences, because it's not what I was expecting when she said, let's have our first Hungarian goulash of our tour that day. And it wasn't not at all what I had in my mind imagined it would be. So it's, again, put another way to share the story and the uniqueness of that culture.
Ryan, have you made haggis yet?
That was one of our next things I was wanted to look up, and I was like, man, this is going to be more challenging than other things, because it's particular things from the animal, whatever that you don't generally get anywhere. You have to go to probably to a butcher, a local, to find something most people would not have. So I haven't looked into it too much yet, but one of these days we can make it maybe. So
I used to go eat the Scotch eggs. We used to.
we have a recipe
beautiful.
for that.
We have a recipe for that
I
as
love
well.
Scotch eggs. Every time I go to a
Scotch
place
eggs
and they
super
have them,
cool.
I'm like, we order it. I'm like, you know.
Have you
Our
made?
recipe was good. Our recipe that I practiced it a lot of times before we published it, and it's a fun recipe. They're hard. Scotch eggs are not easy to make. There's a lot of labor, and I can see why they're expensive at places you get them, because
Yeah, but
they
they're
are
good.
labor intensive. They are good. Oh my goodness.
They're good and good for our hips too, man. I'm telling you. It's good for walking the dog. But I was going to say too, there's Drunken Crumble. Is it because we used to work with the San Diego Scottish Highland Games out when we lived in San Diego and do their guide for them back in our days of print publishing. And, our friends, sadly they've passed away but we would get all these recipes and put it up on their website and try to make one once because she had rhubarb and it was Drunken Crumble. But I think we got a little heavy on the, Scotch whiskey there. It got a little heavy because it was just like, I think you could light a fire off of this one little dessert. But it was fun. And every time we went to see them, they're like, sit down, have a drink. And every time I went home, like I would go and do something with them, getting their ads and whatever for their publication. They'd give me bottles of rum for Nancy. I don't know give your mom some rum. And I'm like, all right, she'll take it. I don't know what was going on, but we had such a good time with them. It's just, and it is the culture and I love what you guys are doing. This is so cool. Now, wandererscompass.com, everyone, is the website. The podcast is every second Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, which is Ryan's standard time. And then or you could say 4 p.m. Pacific time, which is Joelle's her standard time. I don't know what standard time means anyway, but anyway, Joelle's in the Pacific Northwest and Ryan's in Pennsylvania, and he knows how to do the polka. So stay tuned for the next episode, which we're going to talk about the Presidio in San Francisco. Definitely a lot of history. Can't wait to hear about Joelle's experiences. And Ryan, we're going to talk some military history there, right? So that's good Warrior Wednesday stuff.
Sounds good.
Presidio. So thank you both so much. Everyone, the link for their Q&A, which I didn't go into too much. We wanted to get their backstory. But the Q&A is fun and interesting to read. So check that out. I've linked it in the episode notes, as well as the link for their blog, wandererscompass.com. So check that out. Thank you both so much. I can't wait. This is going to be so much fun.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you
we are
so
so
much.
excited as well.
Thanks for joining us here on Big Blend Radio's Wanderer's Compass Travel Podcast. New episodes air every second Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can follow the show at bigblendradio.com and keep up with Joelle and Ryan's adventures at wandererscompass.com.